now gotta go. I won't say that even though got somewhere to be, and I'm already running late. I know they're going through it. I wanna help, happy to do it, but I'm not helping if I'm not listening to a word they say. I'd be so much better off saying, can this conversation wait? I'll take care of everyone but me. It's about time that I set some boundaries. 'Cause when I don't, when I won't, everyone in my life suffers. Saying yes when there's nothing left, keeping what I want undercover, done making that mistake. I've got what it takes to set some boundaries. Gonna make my true intentions known. Stop feeling guilty when I say no. Be willing to lose the people who can't deal with it. No more endless hours of energy wasted or unattainable expectations. It's hypocritical to say I will when I'm not feeling it. I'd be so much better off revealing it. I take care of everyone but me. It's about time that I set some boundaries. 'Cause when I don't, when I won't, everyone in my life suffers. Saying yes when there's nothing left, keeping what I want undercover, done making that mistake. I've got what it takes to set some boundaries. Set some boundaries. Doesn't matter how long it takes if I keep the pages turning. The truth is I'm still learning. The truth is I'm still learning. I take care of everyone but me. It's about time that I set some boundaries. 'Cause when I don't, when I won't, everyone in my life suffers. Saying yes when there's nothing left, keeping what I want undercover, done making that mistake. I've got what it takes to set some boundaries. To set some boundaries. Gonna set some boundaries.
Welcome back to the Eager to Please podcast. We're starting a new chapter this month on boundaries, and man, you're really in for a treat. We've got 2 special guests lined up to share some pretty incredible stories about this topic, giving us strategies on what healthy boundaries are, how to set them, and you'll even get a glimpse into the male perspective on all that. So make sure you're tuning in each week. But as for now, let's talk about boundaries and why they're so important, or at least what I've learned about them on my personal journey. Look at boundaries as if they're like a justice scale, made up of 2 primary components, and if one is out of line, it tips the scale. The first component is being able to set healthy boundaries, as they're the cornerstones for self-esteem, self-respect, and healthy relationships. But if you're like me, setting boundaries can be difficult, especially when you feel like you don't know who you are or what you want, because you've been living on the auto yes pilot for so long. For me personally, I would rather consume the stress than let someone else down. My boundaries then blend into the boundaries of what others want. There's never a true separation, never feeling completely secure in my own skin. The other part of the equation, though, is communicating those boundaries. Sorry to be the bearer of this news, guys, but no one can read your mind or know what your needs and expectations are if you don't share them. So having boundaries without communicating them isn't effective. It's like having a neighbor park in front of your house every day rather than asking them to kindly move their car. Instead, you avoid the conversation and allow your frustration to build, doing you no good at all. Or it's like allowing a significant other to continually show up empty-handed when you've offered to cook them dinner dozens of times. In your head, it only makes sense if they would offer to bring a bottle of wine or a side dish. Or better yet, cook you dinner once. So instead of getting pissed about it and letting it ruin your evening, maybe a conversation needs to be had with that person. Maybe they're not aware that what they're not doing is upsetting you. Having the conversation is scary, I get it. But nothing changes if you don't speak up. Then it becomes just as much your fault for not communicating your feelings. Remember, no one can read your mind. So not only was I ineffectively setting boundaries and not communicating them clearly, I threw into this toxic concoction my need to be perfect, turned the blender on high without a lid, and made a disastrous mess of things that I'm now learning how to clean up. I think this is one of those things like an eating disorder that you learn about yourself. Work really hard to identify ways to improve it, but still sometimes struggle with it because you'll always be a recovering, you fill in the blank, perfectionist, people pleaser, workaholic, so on and so on. Because after all, we're human and we're perfectly imperfect. Here's a recent example I'll share with you that didn't start out so pretty but ended up being fine. My ex and I share custody of our kids, so on weeks that I don't have them, I tend to fill my time with the thing that I love only second to them. Songwriting. I had planned on attending this 2-day retreat that I had been looking forward to for months. About a week before I'm set to go, my ex asks if I can keep the girls on a school night because he wants to attend an awards banquet for his girlfriend who's set to get some prestigious award for being this kick-ass chief technology officer. Therefore, he won't be back until late, if at all, to get the girls in bed. He was struggling with the idea of having our oldest babysit, who's way too old for a sitter of her own, and definitely old enough to watch the younger ones, but wasn't quite sure how that would go down because we all know how that goes with older sibling babysitters. Usually the younger siblings give the oldest one a hard time. We also know that bedtimes are a little more relaxed when you have a sitter. But this was a school night, and I wanted them in bed at a reasonable hour. After all, they have school the next day. So naturally, I'm his bailout. Of course I can watch them. They're my kids. So I said yes without hesitation, without checking to see if I'd had anything going on. And then I checked my calendar, and wouldn't you know it, it's the same night as the first day of my retreat, which now means I'm going to have to leave early on the first day and show up late on the next so I can get the kids to school. Now I'm panicking, and I'm stressed, because this was not supposed to happen. My plans were scheduled on a week that I didn't have them. I had it all ironed out. So why am I now taking on his problem? See, this has always been my Achilles heel. I say yes and take on other people's issues, and then it becomes an even bigger issue for me to solve. Under any other circumstance, whether I would have had plans or not, I would have dropped what I was doing to help. But this particular time was different. This time, I felt angry that he needed to divulge why he needed me to watch the kids. I was angry because I felt slighted as if my time wasn't as important as his. And maybe there was some jealousy in there too. Did I not just sacrifice 12 years of my life, 12 years of my earning potential so he could focus on accelerating his career while I stayed home to run the house, raise the kids, and become obsolete? So I did exactly what I always did. I stewed, I festered, I cried, I cussed. Yes, I have a terrible mouth and I'm working on that too. This irritation and resentment sat with me for days. And it showed up in various ways in my life. I could feel the tension in my neck and my mood tank. I became more withdrawn, throwing myself back into old behaviors. It's no longer his issue, but now it's mine. And I didn't even ask for it. Or did I? Did I bring this on myself for not communicating well? I replayed the conversation in my head. Each time it stung more, which made it even worse, until finally I was like, you know what? This is BS. I don't like feeling like the victim. Why can't we both have what we want? So I finally had a conversation with him, and I told him I was feeling super anxious about having to leave early and to get the kids to school the next day, and I proposed a plan that could make it work for both of us. But that would mean It added some running around in there on his part. It seemed fair if we both compromised. I tell you all that to share that the old me would have stewed and festered and cried and cussed. But that's where the cycle would have ended. I would have carried the problem, making it my own, when it really wasn't mine to carry. The new me recognized that I needed to communicate my boundaries. And you know what? It all worked out in the end. Turns out, I didn't need to watch the girls after all. So all the stress and panic was for nothing. Whew, crisis averted. Maybe lesson learned? I'm still holding out hope on that one. One of our guests later this month, Mary Beth Highland, started a mindfulness company with her husband, James, because the two of them have had similar struggles setting personal boundaries, as I'm sure a lot of you listening can relate. But these two truly walk the walk and talk the talk they preach. So I thought ending this episode with some positivity would be fitting. I saw this in a newsletter they just recently published that was too good not to share with you that James wrote. This all comes from him, by the way. He shares 3 powerful lessons about relationship boundaries. Number 1, silence isn't strength. Honest communication is. For years, I believed that not saying anything was the right thing to do. I thought avoiding conflict meant I was being a good person. I thought keeping the peace meant swallowing my feelings. But what I've learned, unspoken feelings don't disappear. They show up later through tension, resentment, or emotional withdrawal. That's why healthy boundaries mean speaking up before resentment builds. If something feels off, say something. If you need space, communicate it. If you need time to process, express that clearly. People can't meet your needs if they don't even know what they are. Number 2, boundaries are bridges, not walls. So many people think of boundaries as pushing people away, but they actually do the opposite. They bring you closer. A boundary is not, I need space, so leave me alone. A boundary is this, I need space and I'll come back when I'm ready. See the difference? That's the power of boundaries. They don't build walls, they create safety. They allow both people to feel seen, heard, and understood. And the third one, boundaries create more connection, not less. The biggest surprise about boundaries is that they make connections stronger. When I learned to say, I need time, but I'll be back, the other person feels acknowledged. When the other person learns to give you space without taking it personally, you feel more free. Now, instead of spiraling into old patterns, we have a shared language. No more guessing, no more assumptions, no more resentment. Just more understanding, trust, and connection. Boundaries are the secret to thriving relationships. If you've ever found yourself feeling like your needs aren't being met, suppressing your feelings to avoid conflict, expecting people to just know what you need, or feeling guilty for needing space, here's what James wants us to know. Setting boundaries is not selfish. It's not causing drama. It's not about creating separation. It's about creating the healthiest, most connected versions of your relationships with anyone. Your partner, your coworker, your boss, your family, and your friends. Boundaries don't create distance. They create freedom. Boundaries don't cause tension. They dissolve it. Boundaries don't make connection harder. They make it easier. I leave you with those thoughts right there. Hope to see you back next week for our next episode. See you then.